Hey guys, LevelCap here, and welcome to another episode of This Week in Gaming. EA have confirmed Battlefield 6 will not debut until 2021 at the earliest. The news broke during an investor call with EA's CEO Andrew Wilson. He said EA and DICE are doubling down on delivering long-term support and content for Battlefield 5, highlighting the recent Pacific update that launched this week. Many fans of the franchise are concerned Battlefield 5 will never achieve the same success past titles like Battlefield 4 did after a rough first year of its release. DICE, however, thinks otherwise. They'll be continuing to develop the new content for Battlefield 5 going into EA's 2021 fiscal year, which ends April of 2021. They hope to build the franchise up with Battlefield 5 ahead of the next generation console launch. Sony and Microsoft are both targeting a holiday 2020 release window for their new hardware. Rumors about the next Battlefield game being a next-gen console launch title have been buzzing for months. At one time, it was rumored to be a Bad Company game. For now, all we know is Battlefield 5 is getting more content and updates throughout the next year. Alongside the Pacific update, a new digital edition of Battlefield 5 launched called the Year 2 Edition. It includes all Tides of War weapons and vehicle unlocks up to the Pacific's launch, as well as some cosmetic items. It's priced at $49.99. The current deluxe edition for Battlefield 5 is no longer for sale. As for the Pacific update, it also adds 2 new maps, Iwo Jima and the Pacific Storm, the Japanese and American factions, some new vehicles, 4 new weapons, and more. I did a full review of the new weapons and first impressions video about the new maps, so be sure to check those out. DICE are already tweaking the balance on Pacific Storm. One tank has been removed from the defending team on the map's first breakthrough sector. Defender tanks will now also respawn every 600 seconds. A Conquest-only playlist is currently available for 2 new maps. In our final bit of Battlefield 5 news, the game is currently free to play, in full until Monday. So if you haven't checked it out yet, now is a great time to play it. EA also confirmed in a joint statement with Valve that select EA titles would be returning to Steam. Jedi Fallen Order launches on November 15th and will be the first title added to Steam. In the coming months, EA will add The Sims 4 and Unravel 2. Later next year, we can expect Apex Legends and Battlefield 5 as well. EA are also making their EA Access subscription available to Steam users next spring. All EA titles on Steam will support crossplay with Origin users. Details like if users will also need Origin installed and if your Origin library will be automatically added to Steam are yet to be announced. Modern Warfare's opening weekend was the best Call of Duty launch of this console generation. It broke $600 million in its first 3 days of release. The prior record holder was Black Ops 3 at $550 million in 3 days. While that's certainly a very impressive improvement over previous titles, it still pales in comparison to the launch of Black Ops 2. That game made over $500 million in its first day alone. That said, Modern Warfare is still the franchise's best-selling PC launch ever. Clearly, it's been a good week for Call of Duty. As for the upcoming content, a massive leak happened detailing new maps coming to Modern Warfare. Some maps from past titles like Rust, Terminal, and Crash are rumored to be returning. As for the new maps, the leak alleges 4 new Ground War maps, 3 gunfight maps, and a handful of original 6v6 maps will be added. All that said, it's unclear if all these maps will be added at once, drip-fed over time, or as packs with 1 or 2 maps each. The source of this information is Datamine, so take that as you will. This is not confirmed information, but just theorized based on in-game files. Apex Legends has crossed 70 million total players. In its first week of release, the game racked up an impressive 50 million players and has since added another 20 million. And while that might be a far cry from, say, Fortnite or PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, both of those games combine their player totals with their mobile editions, and Apex's mobile version is barely in development. On November 5th, Apex will be getting a limited time duos mode. Permanent support for solos and duos has been a top request by players since the game launched. And while the game is generally balanced for trios, Apex still plays quite well in smaller modes. Ubisoft are promising to turn things around with Ghost Recon Breakpoint. Since launch, the game's reviews have been marred by widespread bug reports and complaints about aggressive microtransactions. Digging even deeper, some players feel like the game is at odds with itself. On one hand, it's marketed almost like a survival game, but on the other hand, the game plays a lot like a looter shooter similar to Destiny 2. Ultimately, it's unclear what will become of BREAKPOINT. For the rest of the month, Ubisoft are focusing on delivering 2 major patches to addressing the game's various bugs. Before the end of the year, they'll be releasing the game's first raid called Project Titan. As for those microtransactions, Ubisoft are apparently going back to the drawing board and doing a massive overhaul of the game's mechanics. While BREAKPOINT might be floundering, Ubisoft's darling child Rainbow Six Siege is celebrating a major victory. The game's DDoS protection system was recently updated and has cut down the frequency of attacks by 93%. They accomplished this by doing several things. Ban waves of users suspected of DDoSing a server have been implemented. The number of matches a server can host has been reduced to 3, cutting down how many gamers an attack can affect at once. Legal action has also been taken against several DDoS attackers and cheat makers. Valve has removed CSGO case keys from the game's marketplace and trading system. Keys purchased before October 28th can still be sold and tracked by users, but from then on, all keys must be purchased directly from Valve. They will be locked to your account. The reason for this change was apparently rampant fraud. Recently, fraud networks have taken to CSGO's marketplace, trying to launder money. They specifically used case keys and accounted for the vast majority of key sales. And while many news outlets are treating this story as if Valve were facilitating mass fraud across the entire CSGO marketplace, the reality is it was a much more specific problem that Valve are clearly taking measures against. The Halo Master Chief Collection on PC will reportedly run at 4K at 60 FPS on a measly GTX 7070. To be clear, that's a video card from 2003. The entire collection is currently being overhauled for release on the PC. The developers are releasing each game chronologically, with Halo Reach coming out first. The beta for Reach is expected to release very soon and might be the final test phase for the game before its full release. Ubisoft have confirmed 5 of their upcoming games will be available on the next generation of console hardware: Watch Dogs Legion, Rainbow Six Quarantine, Gods and Monsters, and 2 unannounced titles that will all get the next-gen treatment. The 3 titles we know about all have current-gen releases, though they were all recently delayed. The PlayStation 4 has broken 100 million units sold. For comparison, the Xbox One has sold around 50 million units since launch. The PlayStation 2 is still the best-selling console of all time with 155 million units sold. But the PlayStation 4 is officially the second best-selling home console ever with 102.8 million units sold. Death Stranding's review scores are finally in. Interestingly, they're all over the place. Some outlets review the game very favorably, while others find the tedium of its gameplay at odds with its grandiose presentation. Many reviews say the game is groundbreaking in terms of visuals as well. The game's PC port was recently announced by Kojima himself, so expect those graphics to get even better when it releases next year. The PlayStation 4 version of Death Stranding launches on the 8th. BLIZZCON is in full swing. With protesters surrounding the Anaheim Convention Center this week, they protested Blizzard's treatment of Hong Kong native and Hearthstone Grandmaster BLIZZCON. During the presentation, the company's president, J. Allen Brack, offered a somewhat vague stage apology for the situation, accepting accountability and promising to do better. However, he did dance around mentioning Hong Kong or anything of that nature during the apology. It's clear that Blizzard is still very afraid of any sort of retribution from China regarding any sort of political statement from the company. During the convention, multiple games including Diablo 4 and Overwatch have been announced. Diablo 4 will continue Diablo 3's story with a new cast of characters and story. Overwatch 2, on the other hand, is, confusingly, just a continuation of the existing Overwatch. It almost sounds like a big expansion update rather than a new game. Progress from the original game will carry over to Overwatch 2. All the new maps and modes coming with the sequel will also be available in the original. It really begs the question, why didn't Blizzard just release Overwatch 2 as an overhaul for the existing game? Or just call it something else so that people don't confuse it with an actual sequel. And that wraps it up for today's episode of This Week in Gaming. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know if there's any stories you think we missed or what you thought was the most interesting in the comments down below. And I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap, signing off.